Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Horseplayers Happy Hour, our weekly Friday happy hour contests and live streams we've been doing for the last several months. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatel, very far from the Brooklyn bunker, not even in the Saratoga outpost over on the little house on the east side. We have moved north and east. I am in the process of self-quarantining in the lovely state of Maine. My in-laws have this wonderful, they call it a cabin, but it's more like a compound on a lake here in Maine. Everything we need right here. So able to chill out, watch a whole lot of racing, study a whole lot of form, do a whole lot of podcasts, and very happy to be joining you for this Friday happy hour. We'll get to the specifics of what it's all about that we're doing here in a minute. But first things first, I want to bring in my friend and my colleague, Matt Bernier. Matt, how are you this week?
Yep, doing well. Everything seems to be going swimmingly. I don't know about you and where you are in Maine. Here on the North Shore of Massachusetts, kind of a gloomy, chilly day. It's only about 62, 63 degrees for, day before 4th of July. Would have expected a little bit more, but I know it's supposed to ramp up next week temperature-wise.
I am hoping that things clear up a little bit. I'm expecting neighbors to put on impressive fireworks displays. That's a tradition up here. I've taken out the boat on when it falls on the weekend, on the Friday, the Saturday, even the Sunday, and the neighbors compete to have their own Grucci-esque fireworks displays. It is a lot of fun. Hopefully things will improve just a little bit in time. I've got all kinds of grilling going on. The brisket is now sitting wrapped in a towel in a cooler. We're getting ready to carve that up when we finish here. We got a lot of fun 4th of July festivities, but so much going on in terms of horse racing. It's amazing, this compressed season we talked about last week. Before we get too far into this, let's tell people what this is all about. So we do these happy hours. We're going to be covering racing today from Belmont and Gulfstream. You can watch along. You can play along over at horseplayers.com. If you look for the Horseplayers Happy Hour contest there, you will see that what you have is a $20 entry fee to a feeder for the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge. The qualifier that this feeds into will be happening tomorrow, and you can win your way in. Best thing about this, of that $20, some of it is funding the prize pool, but the extra little bit is going to charity. Two charities, the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance, who do the very important job of accrediting all the various thoroughbred retirement organizations, and the TRF, our founding partner over on the In the Money Media Network, where Matt's show and my show are. TRF, the first partner we came up with when that became a business idea a year and a half ago. And they are one of the oldest and most reputable organizations caring for thoroughbreds after their racing days are done, helping people, too, through their Second Chances program. We've been fortunate to give out a bunch of winners since these happy hours went on the air and on our podcast regularly. People have said, joke, tongue-in-cheek or whatever, hey, I want to buy you a new hat. I want to leave you a tip. We don't need it. We appreciate that. We don't need any of that. We want you to support our partners, none better than TRF. And there's the link right on the screen where you can make a donation, trfinc.org/players. We're also working on a new fun link to get there through the website, but I'm not sure if that's live yet, so I'll wait a week before plugging that. But we're here for charity. We're here to win into what I think is the best contest of all, with no offense meant to the NHC, the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge. And, of course, we're going to talk racing. We're going to try to make a little bit more of an effort this week to answer some questions, too. So if you're watching via the Breeders' Cup Facebook page or on Twitter, leave messages, and we're going to have DJ Unstable himself, producer Craig, try to get to as many of those as we can. Really looking forward to, as we've been able to do so many of these Fridays during this incredible time, getting a chance to hang out with my man, Matt. One other note I'll make is that we have these shows archived, both on the YouTube channel and also in audio-only form, in podcast form, over on the In the Money Media Network. If you go to iTunes and search for In the Money Media, you'll be able to subscribe to all of the shows, including our Players podcast, the flagship show, as we call it, and the eponymous Matt Bernier show. And that's all we got all that stuff out of the way. So Matt, I'll kick it off by asking you, are you participating this week?
Yes, of course. And to the point that we've brought up in the past, even if you are planning on buying in or you've already won your way into the BC, knowing that it all goes to a good cause, or I shouldn't say all of it, but you're donating to a good cause. And the way that I've always looked at it, without the horses, there is no horse racing. We could all be betting with one another. But the point is, if you take the horse out of horse racing, it's kind of hard to do what we're doing. So make sure that they're taken care of after their career on the track is over. And this goes a little ways into doing so. You brought it up. We're well up over $5,000 now as far as contributions charitably are concerned. So all of you out there that play week in and week out with these sort of things, you all should feel good about what we're doing here. And if we can have a little bit of fun along the way, great. But in general, I just look at it and say, look, I don't need the second seed. It'd be great if I could get it. But at the very least, I'm going to get involved with these every time we have them because it's $20 going to a good cause.
That's awesome. And I love that attitude. And I couldn't agree more about the importance of the horse. I remember my friend and mentor, William Murray, who wrote a great book called The Wrong Horse. And there was a line in there about the horses, the protagonists of the drama, incorruptible in their innocence and beauty. You have only seconds to get in to this contest because we are about to begin. We showed you already over at horseplayers.com, the horse player happy hour. If we can twist your arm into putting in a second entry and playing all the twos, we'll allow that. But Matt, who did you end up taking in here?
Very chalky for me. I was having a difficult time splitting the 4 and the 3. I ultimately went with the 4 Tipsy Kitten, who I believe is close to even money, if not 6 to 5. We're dealing somewhere in that ballpark. This is a horse that, David Fox has had this horse on a number of occasions, and they just claimed this one out of that most recent start. There's not a ton of speed you can see as they're breaking from the gate right now. So I was hopeful for sort of a 2 or 3 lengths off of it kind of trip. Instead, it looks like probably going to be up there pressuring the pace from jump than money.
But not a bad-looking spot to be in. And in these contests, this is a 7-race contest, the pick and pray format. All the picks have to be in beforehand. A few dollars at the end, as we've seen week after week in these events, can prove to be decisive. And I would imagine you got to be pretty happy with where you're sitting there, going comfortably, jockey with a double handful, chasing this 13 one-shot Dakota dude. The Tipsy Kitten looks well with himself.
I think, and I heard Jonathan bring it up years and years ago, and to me, there's some truth to it. I agree 100%. The idea of if you think you have a horse that typically does their best running from a little bit farther off of it, and they're going to have some finish, if they're reasonably close to the front, you got to feel pretty good. Now, we'll find out if this horse is going to kick here off the claim, but I wouldn't trade positions with anyone at this point, and that's even, having said that, the horse seems like she's kind of just going up and down at this point, or he is, but from a position standpoint, I don't think the rider could have done a heck of a lot else.
No, it looks like it's going to be a grind if it's going to happen at all. The leader, the Jock on Dakota's dude, made this to a real test. It's a good aggressive ride on this front runner. See if it's going to pay off. You do have the 3 closing pretty well, and the 2 also just switching now and making a move. This is going to be close down to the wire, I think.
It looks like I'm feeling the one's going to hang on here. It seems like it's the 2 horses sort of flattened out a bit. I mean, this is a big start to this contest. If you got involved, and I believe maybe I need to give a little tip of the cap to the Time for US pace projector, because I believe they had the 1 right on the front end. And, in a race that didn't have a ton of pace, I guess this sounds like hindsight's 2020, but I liked the trip that the favorite worked out. The horse just wasn't good enough. And if you had the horse here kicking things off, like I said, a big number, you're looking at 13 to 1 in a short field. And yeah, Timeform US had this horse right on the front end with the gray bar indicating they didn't think there was any speed. So home run for Timeform US with this one.
It's a great tool, and especially when you're looking at a lot of races. Yes, I firmly believe if I sat down and took a half an hour a race, I firmly believe I would make a pace map that was 10% better. It ain't worth it for that kind of time. A lot of times, and you can do both with Timeform too. You can look at their pace projector, and then you can do the JK is the first one I ever heard mention this. He goes through and he doesn't look from the 1 horse to the 8 horse. He starts with the horse that's listed first on the pace projector and then works his way back through the field. And you can find some real gems, and it sounds like this is one of them. So it'll be interesting to see if this one is maybe a little over-represented in terms of the contest. I do know a lot of contest players used to looking at so many different races at once. They will use a tool like Timeform US or some of the other automatic pace map generating programs out there. And it wouldn't surprise me at all. But I also want to give a shout out to Jaramillo, who I think is a terrific front end rider. And this was just a great example to me of sometimes these jockeys on leaders, they sit for too long. And the term JK always uses for that, I can't believe we like 4 shout-outs. His head's going to be big enough as it is. But they invite the closers into the race. This was the opposite of that, where he turned it into a true test by spurting away and getting everybody off the bridle and making them uncomfortable and having to make difficult decisions. And he ends up having enough to get the job done at a juicy 13-1. So props to him as well.
I would say, I guess only isn't the right way to put it. We had 83 entries total for this. So the top 8 win their way into tomorrow's BC qualifier. 7 people had Dakota Dude. So or Dakota's Dude, excuse me. So it's a good start for them. A number of people had the 2 also who ran second. And you're going to get a pretty good place price for that horse who was 6-1. So you should end up with the top 2 horses. If you had either of them, obviously, the 7 folks that had it, you're in the driver's seat right now. But everyone else that had the deuce, I'd imagine you're going to get something close to, if I had to ballpark it, maybe $7 somewhere around there for your place price, which is not a bad way to start, especially if you don't have the winner on top. So we'll see what we get here. It's still, we still got 6 races to go, but it's always good when you can come out of the gates firing like the folks that had the 1 horse.
No doubt about it. We've seen it work every which way in these contests where we've seen early prices prove decisive, and then we've seen so much going on that only a fraction of the people who had the first winner have been able to go ahead and end up qualifying on the next day. I think from where you sit, Matt, in the contest, plain chalk there, obviously not the result you were looking for, but do you, going forward, have the kind of lineup in terms of an array of prices where there's still all to play for, or is it starting to get late early in the Bernier household?
No, I think I've got a couple of horses, especially toward the end, that sort of, I don't want to say they could be get-out-of-jail-free cards, but I do kind of approach it that way where, and I know there's differences of opinion. Jonathan and I have gone back and forth about how to approach these sort of contests. I'm always more inclined to, in either the last race or the race prior to the last, make the best case I can for a horse that's not going to be among the favorites, because to me, it can kind of operate on 2 different levels where if I'm already in a good position, it can kind of block what people are always afraid of with sort of calling the air quotes, the stabbing or taking a shot with a big number toward the end. But also if I am behind, it can kind of work to my advantage where if the horse does fire and I can connect with something, then it can at least put me potentially in position to get through or win some kind of cash or whatever the case may be. So I typically try to, if I can, I mean, I'm not saying I'm going to do it just blindly, but if I can find a horse that I can make a case for, a realistic case, not a crazy case, in that last race or the race prior to the last race, I'll do so. Now, this afternoon, just based on morning lines, I have 3 horses that I think are all going to be probably north of 8-1 for the final 3 races. So right now, I'm not terribly concerned. If another big price pops that I don't have, then I'll start to get a little bit nervous. But I should have time, I think.
All to play for. Dakota's Dude returns 29.60 and 11.40. Son of a Wahoo in second at 6.20. When we get a chance, we will peek in at this leaderboard and see who these 7 or 8 people were who had this first winner. We'll give them shout outs for getting the contest off to the right start. Our next race, I believe, will be at Belmont Park, Matt. Is that right? We just,
yes.
Yep,
we got
1-1-1-1.
Yeah, got 11 minutes here to the 5th at Belmont, which is going to be an interesting little race. Got a pretty heavy favorite at 3-2 right now, who we can talk about in a bit. But I see some familiar names up there. Shona Rosenblum.
Nice.
Ones all across the board. I love it. She typically goes for the donation piece. She picked right with the numbers this week, baby.
Oh, that's great. Joshua Bodie, Mike Somich, who we've had on the Redboard Rewind show and did a fantastic job, and meaning to have him back on the airwaves at some point. Mark Wilgard, the aforementioned Shona Rosenblum, who did such a great job making that run to the NHC. I think it was 2 years ago, and covering every aspect of it. That was fabulous. Michael Cavanna, Chris Podratz, who has a lengthy contest resume, including, did he make did he make a final table run last year? He's had all kinds of stuff. And then Jerry McClellan, who has a long and rich history in the game, both on the side of managing racehorses and also playing in contests. So good to see that. Scrolling through some of the other names there, a bunch of them familiar. Bill Duncliffe from the Can Do podcast. Good to see his name. Brother Ben Baychock. I imagine you spent some time with him back in the Horseplayers days.
He's the best. I love both the Baychocks, but Brother Ben especially, just because when we first were doing the show, we didn't really interact a ton, but then it felt like as more and more time went on, we would just, if we were at the track at the same time, we would make it a point to get together. He let my wife and I, or my girlfriend at the time, stay in their apartment that they have down in New Orleans a few years ago, which was awesome. And he's just, if you've never met either of the Baychocks, if you see them out and about, whenever we can get back to tracks and things like that, make it a point to say hello to them. Brother Ben is just, he's one of my favorite people ever. He's fantastic.
Awesome. They're good people. There's no doubt about it. Great influences on the contest game. For those who don't know, Michael Baychock, the brother in question, Brother Ben's brother, I guess
we should probably clarify that, right?
Yeah. He's the $1 Million Man. He won the NHC back in maybe 2012. It all runs together. 2012. It all runs together. But that $1 Million payday, and he's done a lot in his own life to advance the cause of thoroughbred aftercare, including that amazing story of him claiming and retiring Glorious Dancer, the filly that stuck her neck out and got him in front for the $1 million. Great, good people, great stories. Let's, at some point here today, Matt, we're going to talk about some of the stuff going on at Belmont tomorrow. We've got some win and you're in action. I assume are you studied up on all those races yet?
I am, yeah. I was going to be studied up anyway, but then I got a last-second call from they called the bullpen, and now I've got to make a trek down there tomorrow afternoon for NBC. So I was going to be on top of it anyway, but now I'm especially on top of that late pick 4.
Let's talk about the Met Mile. This race, to me, is so exciting. You can make some case, in my opinion, for every horse in this race. Of course, saying that, I think in my public picks, I'm going to end up kind of chalking out with Code of Honor over McKinsey. But it's an interesting race from so many different points of view. Very curious. Have you made a final selection yet as to where you're going to land?
Yeah, absolutely. And to me, it's the perfect storm, whether the horse runs or not. To me, you occasionally get those instances where it feels like you just get tunnel vision and you just see it. It just sticks out and you go, win, lose, or draw. This is where I'm going to land for a number of reasons. I love Mr. Freeze tomorrow. I look through this race. I think the 3 favorites in here, Vekoma, McKinsey, Code of Honor, they're going to take their fair share of money. It's hard to separate the 3 of them. I know McKinsey's the morning line favorite. I don't know if he'll be favored or not. It'll be interesting to see who ultimately takes that sort of role. But to me, Mr. Freeze, based on that, he can't help but be something in that 6, 7, 8 to 1 range, because those 3 are going to take the lion's share of the money. And he is, in my opinion, the definition of a horse that is very, very talented going 2 turns, but he is a 1-turn horse through and through. You go through his career past performances, the times that he's been allowed to go 1 turn. He debuted on the Beard course down at Keeneland, going about 7 furlongs. It's a victory. He came off a bit of a layoff at Ellis Park, which is more or less it's called a 1.5 mile down there. He finished a good second, comes back and wins the grade 3 ACAC at a 1-turn mile. Gulfstream Park Mile following his decent second. I shouldn't say decent, a good second in the Pegasus World Cup. They turn him back to that 1-turn mile. He wins for fun and throws up giant speed figures. And then his Oaklawn handicap, I think, is probably deceptively good, because I thought the tactics were a little bit curious. He just, to me, feels like the horse that this is what he's wanted to do all along. And from a tactical standpoint, I have to assume Warriors Charge is going to go. I'll be interested to see what they want to do with Endorsed. I would like them to be aggressive with him again, and perhaps not wait to the point that they did last time. I thought it was a brilliant ride from Joel Rosario in that Westchester, but maybe if you're just more aggressive with him from jump as opposed to wait, make that rush up the backside. And then you've got a horse like Vekoma, who's probably not going to be too far off of it. I can see a very easily drawn up scenario where Mr. Freeze breaks, they angle him once Warriors Charge clears. He sits off the flank of that horse. Perhaps you have Endorsed inside. depending on where Vacoma's positioned, he could either end up in a box or involved in that pace situation early on the heels of a giant effort that we saw in that Carter. And I think Mr. Freeze is going to have every chance if he's good enough to take a shot rounding the far turn. I don't see any scenario where I get away from him unless for some reason he becomes the wise guy of all wise guys and he starts eating into the market with the other three, which I think those three are so good that I can't envision a scenario where that happens.
He's going to be a price. I think there's no doubt in my mind about that. And I like the way you drew up the trip. I saw him maybe getting tied into a tussle on the front end with Warriors Charge, a rival who I respect so much. I think it might make things a little difficult for Mr. Freeze if Mr. Freeze chooses to go and let Warriors Charge be either with or just off him. But if he can sit and try to just outfinish, it's a very interesting scenario. I still think even in the good race design scenario you just drew up, there is a world in which Code of Honor just ends up being a little too much to deal with. I just feel like this is a horse who's taken a big step forward as a 4-year-old. It feels like Shug has really figured out how to get the tune that he wants out of this horse. And that last race, to me, was just a perfect example of a race that not only was incredibly visually impressive, but also one where the clock really backed it up. And I feel like he's only, no part of me thinks that was a peak effort. I feel like he almost has to get better just on the numbers at the end of the day. If he does get better, I think everybody might be running for second. But you're talking me into thinking about using Mr. Freeze underneath in some of these combinations. What do you make of McKenzie in this spot?
Well, I mean, so he's a very difficult call for me. From a value standpoint, I just don't think it's going to be there in any scenario. But also from just a horse standpoint, sure, he came back in the Triple Bend and he won rather easily. I think there's a bit of a discrepancy between the buyers and the Timeform US figures. Those are the two that I use predominantly, and we've talked about it in the past here on these shows. I would strongly encourage people, I don't care what the two figures are, but get at least two separate figures and compare and contrast them. And when there's a giant discrepancy, or maybe not giant, but enough of a discrepancy to go back and look, I think that's when you can find some hidden value or find a horse that's going to be overvalued. And for me, I'm not entirely convinced that run from McKenzie in the Triple Bend is good enough or sets him up well enough to beat not only Code of Honor, but a good horse in Vacoma, perhaps an upsetter in Mr. Freeze. And I'm not even bringing up a horse like Endorsed who ran, yes, he had a nice trip up the inside, but to me, that was the best race he's ever run in the Westchester. And perhaps that's a sort of a prelude to things to come. So for me, McKenzie, if he wins, I'll tip my cap and say, you know what, deserved redemption based on last year's trip in the Met Mile. But I have to be against him in a spot like this.
Sounds reasonable to me, and I think at the prices, you're only going to feel that way more and more. I can't wait to see how they bet. It's a fascinating betting race, fascinating contest, and also a win and you're in race, isn't it, for the Breeders' Cup? It
is a win and you're in for the, I don't know if I'm supposed to say the title or not, but for the Big Ass fans.
Oh, Big Ass fans are back? That's great.
Yes, Big Ass fans are back. I believe tomorrow it will be known as the Big Fans, but we're on the internet. It's the Big Ass Fans.
Yes. on national TV, you have to slightly change that. Well, I'm thrilled to hear you're going to be back in action. TV's Matt Bernier riding again on the big network. That's fantastic stuff. We've only got 1 minute at Belmont Park, so we should talk about this race.
Yes.
Are you with or against this big favorite?
I landed on the chalk in here. It was just one of those things where I go through the race a few different times and I'm trying to figure out from a pace standpoint what this is going to look like. I assume C Now is going to go the 7 horse. I think there could be at least one other horse that's involved early on. And I like the fact that Spokane Eagle was close to the pace in that run at Churchill most recently. I know it was in a different barn, and now we go first time out for Michael Pino, but showed some speed, probably paid the price making the front a little bit too early and just faded a little bit late. I'm hopeful that's an effort that's going to make this one move forward, but also you couple that with the idea that go to some of the runs 2 back, maybe a little bit farther back in the PPs. This is a horse that doesn't have to have the lead, and I'm hopeful that a horse like C Now goes. I know there's another horse toward the inside that has a little bit of speed. If the two of them hook up, maybe Spokane Eagle takes up that perfect sort of catbird trip where he can sit just off and make his move around in the far turn.
That's exactly how I saw it and why I put Spokane Eagle on top. I must admit, I think I was envisioning a slightly bigger price, but I'm just going to stick with that off the race design scenario. And I do think this one might just get that perfect trip and be able to outfinish them all. And if I were to pick a speed horse, it would be See Now. Just looks like the best of the ones who I think there will be a few in front of Spokane Eagle. And I think See Now looks the best of them. We talked about Jaramillo and the great job he does out of the gate. Kendrick Carmouche, another rider I never mind seeing on a horse I'm looking to do stuff for me from the front end.
From a price standpoint, because you and I look at it very similarly, of the speed, See Now was the one I was most interested in. I was afraid that a horse like Aristocratic would potentially soften him up a little bit too much. But when I can't help but acknowledge that See Now is unbeaten on fast dirt as opposed to his wet dirt experience. And, is there a scenario where now in hindsight and being able to look at the odds, is the 9-5 compared to 3-1 enough for you? If right now you needed to make a decision, you would pivot from one to the other?
In terms of making like the paper picks that I made, if I knew what the prices were going to be, I probably would, because at that point, when you're making 1, 2, 3 paper picks, you're being asked to split hairs, and that's probably a hair I would split. In my own wagering, I would just use both. If I were starting picks here, I would use both, and I'd probably press, trying to use Dutch principles of betting, where you're trying to win the same or a very similar amount based on your investment. I'd probably use just a little more 6 than 7, but I'd feel pretty good taking 6 and 7 against this field. I did see a little bit of a case for Reed Can, the 1, but I didn't see this one getting a great trip race design wise. That's a horse that I would want north of 6-1 to take. I'd be good just taking the 6 and the 7 against the field here and be done with it.
You know what the interesting thing is? Reed Can in the multis is the second choice.
Ooh, there may be some changes in the betting here late, that suggests.
Yeah, either that or a little on the chilly side. But I mean, again, you brought up splitting hairs. The difference between the 1 and the 7 in the multis is negligible. It's not anything monstrous. So, a little bit of a turn here and there. We're talking about a 2-point difference between 3 and 4-1. So, I think I would probably just be comfortable with the 6-5, the 9-5 on the 6, and taking my chances that a rad can work out a nice trip in a spot like this if the race plays out the way that you and I sort of envisioned it.
And you did use the 6 in the contest, so hopefully you get on the board there.
Correct.
Excellent.
This is one of those instances too where, and knowing that it's a pick and pray, you're locked in. I'm just trying to pick up points right now, knowing that I'm not going to make it all up in one race. Let's just hit the board. Let's get things moving along and, just chip away at it.
I like the sound of that. They're about to break. I just was reminded we've got the Stronach 5 coming up in just a few minutes. We'll have to watch that too. And they're the 4 really quarter horsing to make the lead. I mentioned Aristocratic could be the one to be out there best of all early. And this looks like a real scramble here early on. And I would say that Spokane Eagle is getting exactly the trip we were looking for from this far.
Yeah, 100%. This is, that was fear with, if we were going to look at a horse like See Now, is that Aristocratic going to make him earn it early on, 21-4. I know these are decent horses, 32 open claimers, but that's cooking. And I just like the way that this thing is setting up. Now, Reed Can looks like he's got a pretty decent chance if he can squeeze up the wood from here. Find out if our horse is good enough. That hasn't really gotten busy just yet. I don't know if he's got horse.
Yeah, we're going to find out. The whip is out now, and just going to see if this one can finish. A lead change is needed here. And I think that the 1 has given them all the slip is what it looks like. That money that showed up there is go. Oh, I was watching the horse. The 6 was well beaten.
Yeah.
This winner was very good and did get a perfect trip, but I'm surprised this one ran that well. Really turned it into a 1-horse race.
So we were talking about the will pays, and it's a good way to gauge what potentially you'll be looking at as far as off odds are concerned. This is the sort of thing that drives people crazy. We see about it on social media. We hear about it at the track. Reed Can, loading into the gate, was 4-1. Went off as your co-favorite at 2.5-1. That's a lot of late money. I mean, we're talking about a pool that has $300,000 in it. We're not talking about, one of the smaller tracks that doesn't have a giant handle. Somebody pounded this horse late.
Yeah, that's amazing. I will say full marks to you, though, Matt. There are some clues that you can get when that type of business is going to be happening. And there's nothing better than being able to look at those will pays and have a sense that you don't know how far it's going to drop, but we knew based on that fact that you pointed out that horse was going to be coming in. And I'm curious who can you see with whatever info you're looking at, who pushed out, which was it one of the 6 or the 7 that ended up drifting late?
It was the 6. I mean, the 6 went from 9 to 5 loading into the gate, went off as the co-choice at 2.5. So, I mean, it was a pretty significant, move out as far as the numbers go. Aristocratic did take some late money into 5s. But yeah, I mean, it was a pretty big jump there. C now stayed steady at that 3-1 number and just paid the price with that early pace duel with Aristocratic.
I think that sounds exactly like what happened. Benjamin Hernandez doing a very nice job there, and Reed Can in the end reporting home an easy winner. Look at good old Topper T, the one who ends up clunking up and getting second. Things haven't exactly panned out for this one the way that many of us thought they might after that private purchase after the first race. But this is a useful racehorse. And it wouldn't surprise me to see him find a decent run of form where he's winning races on a major circuit anytime soon. I had sort of given up on him, but it'll be interesting to see after this race if his form is starting to look like one who can maybe get it done in the near future.
I would say interesting note there, equipment change, first time blinkers for him in his 15th lifetime start, major class relief going from the N2X ranks down to the open 32s. So maybe he's found a home. Maybe this is where he actually fits as far as realistic ability is concerned. I know he ran decent, or he won actually an N1X up at Saratoga last year on and off track, but maybe at this point as a 4-year-old, who knows? Maybe it was the blinkers that really woke him up. I'll be curious to see. But maybe this is a more realistic sort of position for a horse like this where, the allowance company is probably just a little bit too tough for him. You get into the open claimers, and if he gets taken, I'm sure the connections, would it be the end of the world? Probably not. But if you have a chance to potentially not only have him get claimed, but perhaps take the giant slice of the pie, that's never a bad thing, sort of a double dip.
He's always had talent, and I'd love to see him put it together and be one who can hang around. I have a soft spot in my heart for these talented horses that end up competing in the claiming ranks, but have stories that we know and a lot of ability. It's a lot of times those kind of hard-knocking claiming horses can be more fun and tougher. And love their racing more than even the stakes horses do. So we'll see what happens there.
It's like one of my all-time favorite racehorses was Keisha Electronica.
Sure.
And because he was just nails. Dead game, was going to run on anything. Distance-wise didn't matter. Surface-wise, I believe they even tried him on grass at one point. But, I mean, he was rock solid. Obviously, just a terrible, terrible story with the way everything ended. But he was the definition to me of what the blue collar lunch pail type was. And he was at the highest level. He ran in some of the big graded stakes races. It was probably a little bit of a reach, but he was that kind of horse that was too good to drop him in for 50, but he wasn't quite good enough to be running in sort of the grade 2 level. He was a listed stakes type through and through. Occasionally want to take a shot in a grade 3, but he was rock solid. And those are the kind of horses that probably deserve more credit than they get.
I'd love to see more of a starter series for those type of horses. New York would be a perfect place for it, not just in the winter either, but if we could, some of these horses, it might be a chance to, it would have to be done just right, but there might be an interesting marketing angle to be able to showcase some of these tough old knockers in ways where they could run in a protected way for a little bit of extra cash and maybe help out the ever dwindling middle class of trainers and owners out there. We're
Well,
0 minutes.
PTF, you hear people. I mean, again, people like to bellyache about all sorts of different stuff. But I mean, what's wrong with the idea of taking a Friday afternoon up at Saratoga and turning it into what you just laid out? I think that'd be a great idea.
A claiming crown type thing,
Yeah.
but maybe come up with some wrinkles and do it as a little bit of a series throughout the year. It could be fun. It could be very fun. The way we have days that feature New York breds, days we feature some of these tougher older horses. It's an ideal worth discussing with some of our friends at Racetrack Management, no doubt about it. We're 0 minutes at race 8 though, Matt. So I want to make sure that the listeners have an opportunity to hear your thoughts on this one. Just saw the 8-5 favorite, the 9 in the post parade. Maybe walking a little short, or maybe I just caught an awkward angle, but didn't look like the kind of approach to the gate I necessarily want from my 8-5 favorite. Who did you end up going with here?
I didn't think there was a ton of speed signed on in this race. You just brought up the 9 Blazing Desire, who I assume is going to just be sent out of there to try to clear off. With that in mind, I was more intrigued by the 8 Uncle Andrew, who I felt could still be reasonably close. Doesn't have to have the lead. If you want to allow a horse like the 9 to get out there, set the pace, you could probably be pressing just off. And what you laid out is something to keep an eye on. I think the price is right if the horse stays somewhere in that 2-1, 5-2 range. So I went with the 8 Uncle Andrew.
All right, Uncle Andrew as they load at Gulfstream. I'm going to, I just noticed I need my computer charger, Matt. So okay. I'll be watching the race, but I'm going to let you talk the crowd through this one once they pop. And hopefully I'll be back and plugged in by the time they hit the wire. And hopefully for you and your contest, and the folks listening at home, this 8 will do a little bit of running.
Well, unfortunately, a little slow out of the gate for the 8, but he's starting to pick it up now. The 9 does indeed clear off at odds of 2-1. My 8's going to be spun very wide around this turn, about 5. So we'll see what kind of trip Uncle Andrew can work out from here. You can see the 9 is a little, I don't want to say a little, the 9 is very rank pulling, as is the 8. So this is all this definitely sort of unfolded in a bit of a unique manner, where the 9 is resenting the restraint that the rider is giving. The 8 broke on the slow side, was used to try to procure the position that I had envisioned the horse working out. Unfortunately, he got a little bit rank on that turn, and the pace is, I would say, very, very honest for the level. Dealing with 5 claimers, 23 in a piece for the opening quarter. The half, I'd imagine, is going to be 47 and change, close to 47 and 2, somewhere in that ballpark. You can see now at this point the rider of the 9 has given the horse's head 46, and holy smokes, I couldn't have been more wrong about that. They really started cooking there. You can see Jaramillo gave the 9 his head a little bit. He's opened up a bit there. The 8 is all out at this. It'll be curious if someone from the back, blinkers on the outside, is trying to get involved in this thing. You know, with the amount of energy that the top 2 expended early on, I would venture a guess that get one or both of them beat. This horse on the outside's got a full head of steam turning for home, blinkers on. There's actually 2 sets of blinkers that are coming on the outside. We'll see if Uncle Andrew can be brave here and dig in. Again, just expended so much energy early on. And it looks like Keepsake Kitten is going to go. Maybe Andrew can hang on for second. It's going to be very close. 7 is coming to him. Ooh, it's close. I'm going to say 6-7. I think it was Verdict is in that might have got the nose down. But Pete, I mean, that's one of those things you're going to go back. If you don't watch replays, you're just going to see the running line for the 8 and the 9. They're going to both show speed. They set wicked fractions given the level, and they faded. There was some stuff that went on there where the 8 horse broke on the slow side. The rider needed to use early on to get into the position that you and I thought the horse may end up with. Problem is, when he did that, he got a little bit rank, started pulling. And on the flip side, with the horse that showed speed, once Jaramillo was able to clear off, he just didn't want to relax. And when Jaramillo gives him the hammerlock, he's throwing his head about really, really rank. And the amount of energy that those top 2 expended from a pace standpoint, that's not going to necessarily show up in the PPs. It's just going to look like they went too fast and that was it. Well, I think there's more to the story than that, and you won't know that unless you watch the tape.
No, those are good notes to make, whether you slug notes into your DRF formulator or keep them in another method. Anything you can do to put your own subjective view on the race, that's the kind of thing. When you go back and look, you're going to have information that other people don't have. And especially, as somebody who I want to be so numerically oriented, but in a day and age where everybody's got numbers, those type of insights can make a big difference. And yeah, that horse ran a very good race and just had to work a little bit too hard, and with a different, I'd call that a winning effort. It was a different kind of trip. Things could be good, and the 9 was one who I wasn't crazy about how it looked pre-race, and then obviously had those issues. That would be a horse I would looking to avoid back at the same level unless there was a lot of time in between.
And I think it's one of those things we can sit here and I'm sure some folks, if you had the 9 or you backed the 9 and you saw Jaramillo just sort of let the horse finally, you get to a certain point where you stop fighting him. To me, that's probably all you can do in that position. It's a no-win situation for the rider where if the horse is just resenting restraint, it's probably not going to work out for you no matter what. At that point, I would rather see the rider let the hands down, try to just let the horse relax on his own as opposed to try to strangle him back and get him to listen to command. If he can get into a decent gait at that point, take your chances. But that's a difficult position for a rider to be in when the horse just doesn't want to listen. Unfortunately, it opens up to all sorts of different critiques from people all across the board. But I don't think Jaramillo really did anything wrong there.
I agree with you that I wouldn't call that rider error, and it is a tough position. But I will also say I can't recall. Oh, I got one. Newspaper of record in her 2-year-old year. One of the rare instances where I could see a speed horse getting strangled, clearly resenting it. We have a call.
Are those the stewards?
I'm trying to see if I can turn this ringer off. I can't answer it. There, this I think is the ringer. Okay, there we go. Yes, got
stewards from Gulfstream calling up.
7's claiming against the 8.
Yeah.
Or it would be the other way around. The 7 finished ahead of the 8. But that's exactly what that sounded like. Pretty funny stuff. All right, we're getting ready. Let's see what we've got. We've got Stronach 5 action starting in just a few minutes. We've been doing these Stronach 5 shows, having a lot of fun with them. Last week, folks got to enjoy my heartbreak as we went through the first 4 legs, and we're sitting on an okay ticket before having our hopes crushed on the rocks of despair in the last leg. Hopefully, we can go one better this time around. I would imagine you've got 10 minutes if you're interested in that. If you're curious in the tickets that JK and I put together, you can check them out, drf.com/ITM. I believe JK even did updates after scratches today, so you can catch our latest thoughts on that. And for next week, if you're interested, go ahead on the In the Money Media Network and listen to our Stronach 5 podcast. Did you get involved with Stronach 5 today, or are you limiting your action to the contest?
I'm limited to this contest, and I also got involved in the Keeneland Qualifier that kicks off. It's actually a late start today because today is actually opening day at Monmouth as well, which is nice and exciting. And I was stunned when I saw their first post is like
5 o'clock.
5 o'clock? Yeah. So, I mean, it's going to be sort of twilight racing to kick things off down on the Jersey Shore. But yeah, so that's the only other action I've got today. I got involved in that, and that's over on Horse Tourneys. And it starts, I think, like I said, probably about an hour from now. So
Horse Tourneys, the sister site of Horseplayers.com, one of our partners in this event that the Breeders' Cup obviously does all their qualifying through. But you mentioned 2 things I want to follow up on. We had Brian Skirka, our buddy, as a guest on the most recent In the Money Players podcast, and he talked about the evolution of these late posts and this fascinating wrinkle that here's a actual sporting event on the East Coast where they're going to have fans tonight. So he went into great detail about all the added security protocols. He made me feel good with everything they're doing about potentially getting down there for one of these Fridays. Through the entire summer, they're going to be doing the twilight racing, 6 races. Starting at 5 o'clock, banging them out every half an hour. I think this was some positive feedback they got based on that bizarre situation that happened with the incredible heat on Haskell Day last year. And I'm just so glad. It's so nice to see people trying to do things different. And a bit ironic in that I'm sure it was initially at least kind of an attendance play. And boy, I could have seen myself trying to knock off work early on a Friday from New York and taking the boat down and doing the whole Monmouth thing. And I would have absolutely loved every second of that. These days, I'm sure the attendance is going to be more locals. But the idea of just having it as part of the simulcast feed, I'm going to have that on when we get off air, and I'll make a wager or 2 to support them. And it's going to be a very interesting and cool Monmouth meet, hoping to bring them back into our partner boat at some point. They're dealing with some budgetary restrictions and whatnot, but wanted to have our buddy Brian on to talk about that. And you talk about the Keeneland qualifier. Well, I'm just so excited about this Grade 1 gamble, July 11th. We've got cooperating ADWs, including the official Breeders' Cup betting partner, TVG, one of the places you can play the Grade 1 gamble. And I think it's going to be huge. $3,000 live bankroll event. They've gotten rid of some of the quirky rules. They're not going to do the have to bet half. I guess just too hard to manage in an online environment. But, there's the Breeders' Cup betting challenge at the top of the pyramid for me. The NHC, obviously, a tournament like no other. Coolest horse player party going. I think every horse player should want to get there at least once. But then if you're naming major tournaments, there isn't one better than the Grade 1 gamble at Keeneland. For more information about that, you can check out Keeneland.com. Obviously, Keeneland and Breeders' Cup have a fantastic relationship event being held there for the second time this year. I'm psyched to see how it all plays out. And I'm really psyched for this, if you'll permit me to say, this Royal Keeneland 5-day meet that's going to be coming up. I imagine you're looking to get involved in the contest and more as we get closer to that. And we're getting a lot closer to it.
And the interesting thing is too, keeping in mind that typically we're used to a spring and fall meet for Keeneland. This year, it's even more unique, not just because of the circumstances, but knowing that we're that much closer. I don't even know why it didn't dawn on me until last week, but somebody had tweeted it, and we're only 3 months from the Breeders' Cup ish, or 3.5 months.
That's insane. That's
it's
impossible.
Not that far away.
I know we haven't even had the Derby, and we're talking Breeders' Cup, and that's with
that's just
reason.
it. There is so much to come in these next 4 months that it's going to be borderline sensory overload, where it's a constant big weekend after big weekend after big weekend. Del Mar starts next weekend. That's bananas to me. So all of the stuff, say what we will, it's unfortunate the way everything is played out with COVID-19 and whatnot, but it has lent itself at least to an action-packed 4.5 month stretch where it's just nonstop, week in and week out. And then you start sprinkling in these big contests, like you say, whether it is the Grade 1 gamble that Keeneland's going to be putting on. We'll see if there's anything else that comes down the pipeline through NYRA or Del Mar or anybody else. But I think the thing that's most encouraging is, you and I kind of spoke about it a little bit last week, the idea that if these ADWs can start to work together and recognize that, there's a giant opportunity here, where as opposed to just kind of digging our heels in and saying it's either our way or the highway, some of a big pie is better than all of a little pie. And to me, that just makes all the sense in the world. If everybody puts their heads together, why not get involved in something like this? We've seen it work with the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge, and it's opened up the doors for that contest to really exponentially grow over the past few years. I can't imagine why it wouldn't work the same for these other giant contests.
We're gonna learn a lot, and we're gonna see a lot. It's amazing. This is Keeneland. So Keeneland's first day is, it's like now. It's this week. I didn't. It's like it's sneaking up on me. I'm talking about July 11th, like it's sometime in the distant future. What is opening day? Do you have it in front of you?
I think it's next Friday or next Thursday, maybe.
Let's take a look. The summer meeting, July 8th. July 8th.
Oh, so it's 5 days from now. It's next Wednesday.
Yeah,
it's literally right around the corner. I believe Del Mar is the 10th.
Oh my goodness!
And then Saratoga is the 17th,
16th, I think.
16th. So again, the ball is rolling. It's chaos from here on out. So, and in a good way. Knock on wood. So, it's fascinating. We're a month away, roughly, from the Travers. The Whitney is going to be less than a month away. We're everything is coming up in short order, and I think it's kind of the I don't want to say the benefit of the whole situation, but the 3-year-old scene, unfortunately, it had sort of the button was pushed to pause it. But as far as the older horses are concerned, really, how much changed? It's not like there were a ton of older races. I know the Dubai World Cup, unfortunately, was postponed this year. But outside of that, what giant event in that kind of time frame did we miss out on? The big cap, maybe?
And the Oklahoma handicap ended up being this sort of de facto, wasn't technically a grade 1, but this de facto grade 1 that scratched a lot of those itches too. So it's
so, I mean, as far as the older horses are concerned, I don't want to say it's business as usual, but it kind of is. This would be the time that they'd all be starting to really ramp up, knowing that they've got this 4-month stretch ahead of them leading into the Breeders' Cup. So whether they're going to run at Saratoga, they're going to run at Del Mar. Now they have an opportunity to run at Keeneland if they want. It's going to be a fascinating time to see how everything leads into Lexington.
For those playing, we've got 0 minutes to race 7 at Laurel. We ended up using the 4, 5, and 6 as A's. And I have this bad feeling that JK forgot about my B horse I wanted to put in when he when he submitted these new tickets.
Oh boy, I'm seeing a blank down there.
Yeah, I thought there was a B horse. Unless this horse scratched. This is one of those terrible things. I'm sure it happens to you too. When you're doing too many, you're handicapping too many cards at once. I can't. If I looked at the PPs, it would all come back to me. But from here, it's just this nagging. It's this nagging idea I have in my head that I wanted to have another horse in the race. But anyway, well, hopefully one of the A's will win. That's a better result anyway. So we'll end up rooting for that, and hopefully nothing too embarrassing will happen this time around. Looks like a nice pool for the Stronach 5 today, at 187, and they're still heading to the gate and probably going to drag for another minute or two. So that's pretty cool. As far as our contest goes, this might not be a bad time to do a quick contest leaderboard update. We've got 4 minutes till the next race at Belmont, which will be our next contest race. So, Craig, if you want to pop that up there, we can take a look. Shona, all the ones, all the ones.
She's number 1.
I didn't even think about that as we watched all those ones come in. Shona, 52.70 in a tie with Josh Bodie. And I'll do the qualifying positions. Michael Cavana still there. Jerry McLennan grinding along. Mark Wilgard. Mike Somich. And I'll read 2 more, Craig, if you feel like scrolling down. But, he might have other things going on. Oh, there's our man. Chris Podratz and brother Ben, who we maybe have knocked into a good position, which would be great. And then Christopher Olson, I noticed he had some points on all 3 entries he was playing. Definitely a name to follow. And we'll give a shout out to Sam Stinson, who's been in regular touch ever since the old DRF Players podcast began. Matt, I remember getting emails and reading questions from him way back in the day when we kicked off that show, and there were 0 other racing podcasts. I think somebody sent out a note today. They actually counted. Care to take a guess how many racing podcasts there are?
Oh, goodness. I mean, it's got to be at least, I would say at least 15.
This gentleman came up with the number 24. I'm not sure how accurate it is. Maybe that includes some one-offs and other things, but 24.
I mean, it's a crowded space, and then you factor in, and we'll give a little bit of a plug to our buddy overseas. Nick Luck now has a daily podcast that just came out this week.
Oh, it's fantastic.
So I mean, it's when you add the big presences like a Nick Luck that pops in there, there is no, put it this way, there's no lack of content. If you're looking for it and you're hungry for it, you can find it.
And Nick, that's a great one for Americans. So I can't think of a better way to stay on top of everything going on overseas. Obviously, it's I've made the mistake to English people calling it the Epsom Derby, and they correct me and say it's just the Derby. Everything else is just an imitation. You don't have to say the Epsom part of it. But we've got that going on, and their unusual calendar this year. And for me, if you're interested in European racing, you want to keep abreast of all these developments of horses, especially who are going to show up at the Breeders' Cup. 2 things you need to do. Listen to any of the Nick Luck content you can get your hands on, daily podcasts, follow on Twitter, Luck on Sunday, etc. And or what I consider our sister podcast, though they're more successful, Final Furlong podcast, my man Emmett Kennedy, who has me on from time to time to attempt to look at European form and also yap about American horses. If you're interested in keeping on top of things, you follow those sources and you'll you'll know as much about the European runners at the Breeders' Cup as any expert will from those two sources. So who's going to go first? It looks like Laurel's going to go first.
And what are we rooting for?
We got 4, 5, 6 at Laurel. And I really want one of those 3 to win because I'm pretty sure there was supposed to be another horse that might have gotten washed out of there. But tell me, let's give quick thoughts on Belmont. I mean, I was very boring. I thought it was super straightforward. I thought Spice is Nice has not had my favorite rides in the last couple. And if they just let her roll, or, and when I say roll, just grinding towards the front is fine. But, none of this burying in behind horses stuff. Like, let this thing roll. If she is going to lose, I thought that Saint Moi was just the obvious one, who should be in front early, form and figures to win. But I think in picks and whatnot, I'd be singling Spice is Nice, or going 80-90% Spice is Nice. Were you any more clever than me in this spot?
Not necessarily outside the box, but I suppose you want to call it a hot take. I don't like Spice is Nice at all. I haven't seen anything from her that I've been blown away by. And I almost wonder if she's become, and who knows, maybe she'll win by 100 today. I feel like she's become much more reputation than what she's actually delivered thus far. And you're right. She's been up against it with some of the rides. I just, in the grand scheme of things, I think we might have lost PTF here. I'm not thrilled with Spice is Nice. I'm not blown away by anything she's done on the track thus far. And if she wins today, like I said, she could win by a pole. Maybe that's a sign of things to come. And clearly people have thought highly of her from day one. She broke her maiden. They run her in the Devona Dale. For those of you that are involved in the Stronach 5, they're off at Laurel Park. I'll keep you abreast of that if you're not already paying attention to it. But Spice is Nice. I wonder if it's a combination of things. I wonder if it's the Pletcher, Johnny V sort of combo. I wonder if it's the price tag. They paid more than $1 million for her. But again, she could run really, really well. I don't see any discernible difference between a horse like her and Saint Moi, who goes out for Belmont, who's only going to put them in positions where he thinks they belong. I like that he's given her some time. And the way that she broke her maiden in that most recent run, given her pedigree, and she did it against older horses, I can't help but think this is only going to be to her benefit based on double will pays. She's going to be the second choice. I just much prefer Saint Moi. If Spice is Nice wins, I'll tip my cap and move on. PTF, we got you back here. It looks like it's going to be a wire job down at Laurel.
Yeah, I'm hoping this isn't the horse that I meant to have as a B. I kind of am having a bad feeling. I got to send JK a very awkward text. Because, this one comes 1, 2, and who ran third? I missed it.
Yeah, I missed it. I saw the fractions. I was looking at 44 and 2, going 5.5 on grass for these claimers. Phil Schoenthal is an underrated trainer down in the Mid-Atlantic. I think he does a really good job.
Agreed on that point, and we're about to be off here at Belmont. Yeah, I just feel like I want to give her a try to be ridden the way that I want to see her ridden before I give up. So that's where I'm standing there.
So here's kind of an open-ended question. I tweeted about this many, many moons ago. At what point do you give up on a horse? At what point do you say enough's enough? You're either not what I hoped you were going to be, or whatever the case may be. At what point do you just cut your losses and say it's not going to work?
It's tough. I'm pretty stubborn. When I can conjure excuses, I tend to. I mean, I'll say this. I'm at that point with Hidden Scroll, and I may be at that point with Spice is Nice, depending on what happens here. I mean, at least she's not being... I've been really disappointed in the last couple of rides. I like this position a lot more, and no excuse from here, except that Moi is pretty good. But I mean, if she doesn't fire from here and at least go very close, I would be off the train. But I mean, she deserves to be, if there's in run, she's shorter than the 1 to 2 from this spot.
You think so?
Yeah.
Even with Saint Moi on the lead?
I think so, just because I feel like the reason she wasn't, 2 to 5 or even a little shorter was the doubt about her ability to get position here. Now, we did see the inside. The inside's certainly been fine. So it's not one of these situations where you see them here at this point in the turn, like maybe earlier in the Belmont meet, where the horse in the nice position was always winning. But She just looks so full of run from here. But Saint Mois tough. It's going to be a horse race.
Yeah, I mean, and who knows? Maybe Spice is Nice is just absolutely, blow by her right now, and it looks like she's moving pretty well. Saint Mois is not giving up, but Spice is Nice is going to go on and get this thing done. I blown away by this performance? No, not really. The reasons you brought up, I mean, this was a really nice trip. The final clocking is seemingly swift. Again, the track's been playing pretty quick, but I don't know. It's going to be one of those things where I'm going to continue to look at her and go, I don't know. I mean, because she's going to be a short price wherever she shows up next. Whether it's, doubt. I can't imagine she'll be ready for a race like the CCA Oaks. That's too quick. I mean, based on this pedigree, do they try to run the Alabama, which is going to be the second week of August, which timing wise would, for a Todd horse, that seems, 5 weeks, 6 weeks. That's a fair amount of time. If she shows up there, she's probably going to take some money, and I would be trying to find a horse to go against her with at a short price. I'll be curious to see what the number comes back. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but I want to look at this race in the cold light of day with all the figures. I mean, these two were just so much the best that it's hard to know how good she really is. But I'll say this: she needed to win today, and she did. So that's from that point of view. I know she's going to be making the connections happy, and they're going to have to plot a course. It's not going to be easy to make that next jump up, but it is possible that you really just did have two legit graded stakes horses here running against overmatched foes, and that both of these could be okay. And certainly, I think Saint Mois is very, very game. Assuming this figure comes back to to the number, I think it's going to be extremely tough against similar in the next race. And Spice is Nice. More questions to answer, but I'm just happy. I'm happy to be right about this one. I hate. We've talked about this before. I detest picking odds-on shots that lose. So when I do land on one, it makes me happy when they at least do the business. PTF, you know what? Probably the other part for me is, and this is not fair to Spice is Nice, but I know her dam was a grade 1 winner. I just pulled up Dame Dorothy's PPs. I never thought Dame Dorothy was spectacular. I thought she was workmanlike at best, and she took advantage of fields when presented her way. I just, and I know it's not the right way to approach it, but there's a part of me that thinks she's much more Dame Dorothy than, name a brilliant 3-year-old or 4-year-old type of filly that Todd has had in the past, or any other trainer has had. To me, Spice is Nice is more of the workmanlike than maybe the brilliant, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I'm probably holding it against her when I shouldn't.
I think she's, it's just amazing the difference that jockeys can make, and that rides and tactics can make. I just feel like she's still, to me, she feels very unexposed, where I don't want to make any real assertions about her ability, because I almost feel like you can just put a straight up line through those last 2 races. So I'm not saying she's going to turn into Songbird or whoever you want to mention. For sure. But I mean, Dame Dorothy, I think a grade 1 winner, right?
Grade 1 winner. She won the distaff. Yeah.
So if that, now I'm remembering. It was the infamous day that JK could never stop talking about, I think.
Oh, yeah.
This was it 2015? Was
2015. This was Pharaoh's
Day. The Divisadero. He walked in. He was going to get shut out, and somehow at the last second got in like his crazy Big Bank Hank $200 straight pick 3 or whatever. Dame Dorothy was one of the horses in that, along with the Divisadero. So I think that connections would probably take Dame Dorothy, but I take your point. There's definitely attendant hype, and we'll see what happens. But there's no doubt about who was best today, and that was Spice is Nice, and I'm happy. There's a measure of redemption for an analyst when. I probably picked her the last 2 days and had egg all over my face. And if it had happened 3 times in a row, I'd have needed a paper bag. So I feel good. I feel good as far as that goes. We should talk about this 9th race at Gulfstream where there's 0 minutes to post. What did you end up doing in here?
Let me tell you momentarily.
You can dig. I can give an overview. We've got field.
This to me was an opportunity where I kind of looked at it and thought, okay, you can make an argument and say a horse like Sammy Sunshine is controlling speed, is just going to walk on the front end. It's a 1-turn mile. I always think horses that can be more forward are more dangerous. She, to me, is probably a more likely winner than the horse that I chose. I ended up going to the inside. I went with Philip Cohen's a piker, just simply because this horse has fast enough races in the past that are good enough to run with these. And I don't know that she absolutely... She's a difficult call for me from a running style standpoint because she has so many races where she's come from way out of it, but she also has races where she's prompted the pace. I'm hopeful she ends up in sort of a, let's say, 2 lengths back down the backside kind of position. I think she got something out of that most recent run. She never threatened in the return effort down at Gulfstream. She was about 4 or 5 wide throughout. It was just kind of even as they rounded the far turn. I can't help but think she's going to get a little bit of fitness out of that, off of a little bit of a layoff. And now second start back to me at a distance is probably a little bit more accommodating than the 3/4. I wanted to give her a look, and I knew she was going to be a price. I didn't think she'd be the longest shot on the board, but she's 11-1 right now. And, Alizé, say what you will, coming from the Navarro barn, I want to see what we get first time back for new connections. For a new trainer anyway, and that was enough reason to kind of turn me off. So I took a shot in here, and this is going back to what we talked about earlier, the idea that these final 3 races, despite the fact that I'm coming from the back, I feel like I've got 3 live shots. So if one or 2 of them connect, I think I should be involved.
I like the sound of that, and I mean that does feel a little bit overpriced on the one. In the Stronach bet, we went with the 6 as our lone A, the aforementioned Sammy Sunshine. We did just on numbers feel obligated to leave in the 2, and then we also included the 7 as a B in these tickets that are no longer relevant. I'm still scrambling to find my original notes if we were supposed to have had that 1 as a B. I'm not rooting against our picks because other people might have used them, but I would say I wouldn't mind I wouldn't mind you winning. Obviously, always great to see you win, and I wouldn't mind one of our Bs coming in. So because we we did play a 2B ticket. I don't want to end up in that ridiculous position that happens from time to time where something goes wrong with the way the ticket went in and you end up having to root against yourself. I will admit that I have done that in my life. I'm hoping not to have that happen here. But hey, people may have, we talk about it all the time. The show. Yeah.
I do it all the time. Where if I don't get a bet in or if I get bounced, like prior and then I have, 2 horses in the next leg of whatever it is and the price, I'm just like, run last and second to last. I don't want you anywhere involved because then I'll feel like real.
I do the same thing.
I thought you brought up an interesting point. The 7 horse was a backup. I think immediately people look at it and see that they've come from the gate. People immediately look at it and say, well, the horse beat off the turf runners, yada, yada, yada. There's a big discrepancy between Form US Fig that was Phil earned and the buyer. And, that's those instances where you could potentially find either a little bit of value. In this case, it doesn't really good to knock a horse that's going to be a ton of money, or it's going to be a middle price. But the fact that this one's 5-1 in this field, I think it's an interesting sign here.
We'll see. It's not a horrible position to be in here. Sammy Sunshine, our A, on the lead, looks to be off the rail, at least decently. Where's your long shot?
Rear, I would have hoped that she was going to be a little bit closer than this. I don't know if she's going to put her feet up at any point. This different running style. Gulfstream, she's starting to run a little bit from the back, but you got a lot of makeup.
It'll have part a little bit.
Yeah,
you are running from the back. It looks like the 6 is about to get swallowed by the 8, and then we got a horse moving through on the inside. That might be Alizé. And the stretch here, and still we appear to have a chance. Yeah. The 2 is fine, but this 4 Sky Chaser, who we is arriving on seen late. I think it's a whole though. So come 2, 4, 8 in the 9th race at Gulfstream. A B horse for our non-existent Stronach 5, a low number. And yeah, I mean what has been your general approach to service Navarro offers?
I want to at least see one. I want to see if this is a horse that regresses in a dramatic fashion, or if they run something what I would consider a decent race. Now, I wouldn't have bet him at the price that he was last weekend, but there was a part of me that figured Forensic Fire is not going to be a horse that just can't pick his feet up anymore. You know, he felt like he was going to be a decent horse, and for him to come back and win the way that he did in the True North, I don't know that he's going to be a Breeders' Cup Sprint type, but I can very easily see him being a grade 2 fringe grade 1 type, depending on what the field draws up. I think that's the thing. I think it's too knee jerk to just sit there and say any horse that exited a barn like that, it can't run at all. I get it. To me, the glaring ones are the low level claimers that all of a sudden ran holes in the wind. Yeah. Horses that always seemed like they were probably going to be okay, whether it was pedigree wise, whether it was price tag wise. Those are the horses. And I'll bring up a name that was one of my favorites and is still one of my favorites. And I think he's always going to be questioned a little bit just based on that whole situation. I think Sharpez Tekka is dramatically underrated as far as what his actual capabilities were. I get it. He was more or less a one-way kind of horse. But boy, I thought he was nails. I thought he was really good. And I think he would have been really good in anyone's barn, not just the barn that he was in.
Yeah, I think it's a reasonable opinion, and it's hard to keep the two thoughts in your head at the same time, that these horses were obviously getting some unfair help, but still had some inherent talent in many instances. And that was, I mean, Forensic Fire is just a great case in point. It wasn't the strongest race that the horse ran in. It would have been, I'd feel a little bit better talking about how good he still is if Promises Fulfilled had showed up in that race.
Sure.
So, it was a suspect group for the level. I think it's safe to say. But it'll be interesting to see going forward. Obviously, very talented horse who was running at his preferred surface. And I'll probably try to take a look again against the next time around. I've had John Camardo is going to look at this question through data. This is one of these questions about what to do with these horses that's so easy to get caught up in the narrative piece of. And there is a lot of data out there. And the very preliminary look that he did was that these horses out of those barns they didn't win as much as the odds said they would. In other words, it was clearly like a negative factor. If folks are familiar with the statistical concept of impact value, the impact value of being out of one of those barns, like significant negative, but maybe ironically, the ROI, return on investment, if you just bet everyone, I think looks like it's going to come back okay. So it's one of these things where, yes, the way I read that is, and I'm no statistician, but the way I read it is a negative, but everybody knows it, and you can still bet them when there's reasons to bet them. Like you don't have to just stand. It's not one of these things it's the opposite of overbet. It's not exactly underbet, but it's not overbet either. You know what I'm? Does that?
Yeah, no, 100%. I don't want to insert the word value, but there's perhaps instances where the horses aren't bet as much as they probably should be, just simply because of the circumstances.
Yeah, and when everybody sees it,
right.
What's it worth? But it's very hard in a public handicapping role for me to put one of those on top. And the first one I think I've put on top is the one that blew up at Belmont earlier today. So it serves me right. I should have stuck to my guns as far as that goes. Are we ready for a contest update, do you think?
Yeah, let's see. Yes, we are official after that last race at Gulfstream. So there you have it. That's the updated board.
2 races to play. Joshua Bodie has taken the lead. Michael Cavana in second. Shona all the ones. Rosenblum hanging tough in third in a pretty good position. 2 races to go. All to play for still, but you got to feel good if you're in these top if you're in these top spots already, especially those top 3. Then Mike Somich in 4th. Jerry McLennan 5th, Mark Wilgard in 6th, Chris Podrat 7th, and Ben Baychock 8th. So almost no change since the last time we looked in at this leaderboard. Producer Craig scrolling down there for folks who want to check it out. You can also just go to horseplayers.com, find Horseplayers Happy Hour, and look on the leaderboard there. Lots of ways to get this info and follow along. And it looks like, so we've got 2 more races left. It's going to be the 10th at Gulfstream in 15 minutes time. And then that will be followed in short, or is Belmont first? Let's see.
I think it's probably going to be Belmont.
Yes, Belmont's going to be next with the 7th race, and then we'll wrap things up, if logic holds, which it doesn't always do in this game, with that 10th race at Gulfstream Park. So that's what's happening as far as all that stuff goes. We'll also be offering a little bit of bonus coverage of the next race from Laurel Park as well. That goes, their 8th race goes in 4 minutes. And we've got a big favorite that JK and I singled in the number 8 horse in that next race at Laurel. I'm trying to remember the circumstances. It'll all come back to me. Right. This was the race that No Dozing was originally cross-entered in, and the big favorite, Always Mining, that I know that JK really pushed for to be the lone A. I was half tempted to try to get cute with a horse like Cordmaker in this spot, but in the end, we relegated that one to a backup and went with Always Mining as the lone A. And the crowd tends to agree, 3-5 on Always Mining in the next race at Laurel. Of all the big stakes races tomorrow, Matt, which one are you the most looking forward to?
I mean, the Met for obvious reasons. I mean, there's a case to be made that despite the fact that it's only 8 horses, that it's the best field that we've seen so far in 2020, top to bottom. Of the other graded stakes races on the card at Belmont, I think the Manhattan is kind of sneaky, just simply because I think everyone's going to look at it and say, well, it has to go through Chad. And I mean, how can you really argue? I feel like when Chad shows up in a grade 1, there's good reason. But as much as I love Instilled Regard, and I've made many cases for Rock Emperor as well, I don't think it's that simple. I think there are interesting runners in here. Maybe it's the other Chad. Maybe a horse like Devamani, who has shown a little bit of ability. I still think he's a little bit more of a nibbler than anything, but that doesn't mean that he can't get involved at a more decent number. And I don't know about you. This kind of goes back to what we were just talking about. When is enough? When is too many times to go back to the well? I'm going back to Channel Maker. I think he is very dirty as far as his form is concerned. I don't think a real representative run has been delivered. Well, I shouldn't say that. His McDermott, I think he ran really, really well. But I don't think you've got a representative effort since the Turf Classic of October of last year. The Breeders' Cup, I'm drawing a line through the MacD. He made a really early move into the teeth of the pace. I thought he ran really well. He got looped by a couple of really talented runners. Comes back in the Mervyn Muniz. Rails were down. Inside 3 paths on grass, I thought were exponentially better than the rest of the turf course. He was nowhere near that. And then in the Tiller, I think it was one of the rare instances where Irad had him in a good position, but then he got all bottled up and there was nowhere for him to go. He couldn't extricate himself. By that point, the other horses that had looped him, I know Perrette was the one that kind of wired the field, but now you're going to get a price on him. I think his best is, I still think there's something there. Put it that way. If he's reasonably close, I don't know if he's going to be on the lead, but if he's 2 or 3 lengths off of it, I want to give him at least one more chance at double-digit odds.
I don't think it's crazy. I mean, I'm sick of his act. And
that's
paper,
it.
I mean, there's dirty and there's like Channel Maker dirty, where you don't even have a race in the damn PPs the way I print them, where the horses even hit the board, let alone won. But you make a great point about that McDermott. That was a much more impressive race than it looked like. That was an early move into that hot pace. Everybody knows how much I'm always yapping about that angle. And it could just be a question of value and which one isn't like the others, because I can't fully embrace any of the Chad runners. I mean, Rock Emperor would be the one that I like the best of that trio, and I loved Last Day, and it didn't work out. Obviously, though, I mean, I think that's pretty good form. United is a real horse, and incident that he got DQ'd for didn't really do himself, kind of knocked himself off stride a little bit too. I don't know that it's going to be a very good setup for him. JK and I both picked the same long shot in here, and that's number 3, Cross Border. And it was just a pace case where I love the idea of long shots out in the lead that you could see the other riders potentially just saying, well, that one's going to come back. I'm not going to be the one to make the move. And even though most trainers with 3 in the race, you'd say, well, there'll be team tactics. Chad will have somebody be the speed, but he doesn't really operate that way. I think all 3 of those horses kind of want to sit. I just don't know who's going to run with him early. I mean, maybe Channelmaker could.
He's the one that I want at least. Again, I'm not suggesting you go out there dueling, but being closest attendance where if it is a scenario where Cross Border ends up coming back to the rest of the field, if Channelmaker takes run. Yeah, if he takes over turning for home, I'll take my chances. If he gets run over by Chad or by Sadler's Joy, I mean, or Spooky Channel even, because Spooky Channel's he's probably underrated. I think people look at him like he's just sort of this random horse that, occasionally pops at a giant number. I mean, he's run some really good races over the past handful of months. Do I love him? No, but he's probably disrespected, I would say, in a situation like that. And the sort of, I don't want to say fly in the ointment. The one that I have no idea what we're going to get from is Dot Matrix. Because Dot Matrix is a horse that can be forward. But in the past couple of runs, and I know the Muniz, I'm not going to draw a line through that entirely. He leapt straight up in the air at the start of the race, so don't hold that against him. But he rallied from off of it in the tiller. If he could be in that position that he was more in that run at Sam Houston 3 starts back, or we saw him in one of those state-bred races back at Belmont over the fall of last year, he all of a sudden becomes a lot more interesting as well. So I could see him being more involved early on than perhaps we've seen in the last race. And like I said, the Muniz, if you haven't seen it, genuinely draw a line through it. He went straight up in the air at the start.
He's a very, very good horse. Obviously gets tested for class. You're dealing with obviously our friends at 10 Strikers, sharp as they come, and Brad Cox still white hot and obviously believes the horse has the ability to win a grade 1 on going long on the turf, or the horse wouldn't be in here. So that was another one JK made a pretty compelling case for on the show. And I like your case for Channelmaker as well. I guess my basic strategy, as I think about it a little more, is going to be to fade the Chad Brown runners in here. You do that at your own peril, but there's going to be plenty of equity in these late picks. If I can, I could see myself pressing up my top one, Cross Border, and having a penny on all of the above, on Channelmaker and Dot Matrix. I like your race design for Channelmaker, and I always like it when you can make a case for a secondary long shot that really sort of dovetails with your main opinion. So if I've got this idea that it's going to be the cross-border potential wire job, that having that backup of, hey, here's a horse who, if ridden the right way, might end up getting the first run. I love doing that. And then, I just think to have in for a penny, if you're against Chad Brown, it makes sense in this race. It just makes sense to try to have a penny on the Channelmakers and the Dot Matrixes of the world. So that's good stuff. I appreciated that conversation, and hopefully this horse is going to run a lot better. And if he doesn't, if he gets the kind of trip we're looking for, and he doesn't, it will be officially time to sign the papers.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, you get to that point, like you say, they're off here at Laurel for the 8th race. I agree with you. If he throws in a complete egg tomorrow, then yeah, it's probably time to move on. But I want to give him at least one more chance.
Interesting. Big bounce back up in the odds for Always Mining, who ends up at 2-1 to Cordmaker's 3-1. And Harper's First Ride, another horse I know JK liked, we probably used as a B in the original ticket, not one that I came up with, grinding along down there at the rail at Laurel. But I mean, it's a good position for Always Mining, especially Laurel, not, down the inside, not typically where you want to be. I haven't been following that closely over the course of the last week, but the 2 to 3 wide, this trip that the 7 and the 8 are getting is a very good trip, and both seem to have horse. This could turn into a nice little battle in the lane.
I was going to say, no excuses for the 7 or the 8. I mean, you couldn't really draw this up any better. We'll find out if either of them are good enough name changers trying to get out into the clear. I don't know. And by the way, the 3 is finding
and going on with it, and maybe putting this race to bed. Cordmaker still trying, but I think the 3's home and hose down here, and it looks like it's going to come.
Name changer's trying.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's going to
get
involved here.
Yeah.
And there's some far outside.
Oh, cameraman, you put us away here.
Seriously.
351. 351A. Who was the
cameraman almost did us dirty right there. Tibble rallying from well off of it.
My goodness. Well, that was a nice race. JK picked that horse well. And I mean, we'll look back at when we have time, look back and see. Sometimes it can be a little deceiving with Harper's First Ride. Sometimes even if you're just in the 2.5 path, you're fine.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to think that if that horse did run through a deep inside and that race is even better than it looks, that could really be one to keep an eye on. That was a good effort because those other horses had great trips and they both were slowing down. Harper's First Ride has just enough to hold off the closers and get the job done in that leg of the Stronach 5. And now let's get an update from Belmont and Gulfstream. Let's see where we are there.
That's a Claudio Gonzalez double for you. Or, an exacta. First and second on the lead and coming from off of it. So 1 minute. Oh, there's the stewards again.
We got the stewards again. They want to take that horse down.
We've got a minute at Belmont Park. And at Gulfstream, we got a lot more than that. So we'll focus on Belmont for now.
I guess I can mute myself while this phone is ringing. Somebody's going to pick it up soon.
That's all right.
Not as bad as when I knocked my... What did I do the other day? I knocked knocked the whole computer over on here.
There was wasn't there a broken glass a few weeks ago?
Oh yeah! Oh my God! That was one of the first ones we did. I tripped. I have the scar to prove it. I tripped over some glassware in the Brooklyn bunker. Yeah, I had the bloody sock like Kurt Schilling. I should have kept notes. There's too many hours of Horseplayer Happy Hour now, but we could have one hell of a blooper reel. I think at this point.
Oh my goodness! At this point, I mean, it's pick whatever you want. You can find something for it.
Oh, this one flew. These happy hours flew by because we're getting down to it here with the last two races being this 7th at Belmont, and then we'll wrap things up at Gulfstream. We've got seats to tomorrow's Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge qualifier on the line. Folks interested in playing in the BCBC, so many ways to do it. You can just put up the 10 grand. That's the simplest. But horseplayers.com offers an array of ways to qualify in, as Matt Bernier did in one of the early weeks of our Horseplayers Happy Hour. So folks should check it out and get involved. It's a fantastic contest, and I look forward to covering it every year. And it really, for me, stands at the top of the pyramid as far as these things go. And I want to just thank everybody also while I'm remembering and thinking of it for all the great comments and tuning in. It's been such a great thing to have during these last few months to be able to join everybody on these shows and a great way to hang out with you, Matt. I've really been digging it.
Yeah, it's been a good time, especially in the midst of all this sort of difficult stretch for everyone. If we can just all kind of get together and shoot the breeze for a few hours on Friday afternoons and get things going, and especially a weekend like this leading into the holiday, it's a nice transition. Chop it up over some racing and see some folks we haven't seen in a while. Not ever a good sign when you're ready to load into the gate and you don't have a rider on your back.
That's not typically what you want to see. Who did you end up picking in here? You said you had a price.
Yeah, I thought Pure Bodie was interesting for Mark Henning, and I get it. You look at the raw numbers. This is not a move from Mark Henning's barn. I found it interesting that Lezcano rode Linda Rice's horse in the career debut, Magnolia's Lady, who's your 2-1 favorite right now. He ends up on Pure Bodie. Lezcano rides for Linda a lot, and I know if you can get Johnny V, you get Johnny V. Maybe that's as simple as it is. And by the way, here we are with Jose off of the 9 Pure Bodie. Pure Bodie, Bodemeister, obviously like 10% roughly with the first-time turf runners. This one's a sibling sensation. So, I mean, if there's ever a pedigree, at least the female side of things, that would suggest turf sprint,
that's it.
I thought this was it. And for a field essentially loaded with first starters and a couple that have a little bit of experience, I wanted to go with some bloodlines. And again, I understand Mark Henning, this is not typically a move that he excels with. I just found the jockey change with the pedigree a little bit intriguing. Figured I'd get a decent price. She's 10-1.
I've got a goofy idea in here. Top pick was the 11, Fractorization. Super obvious. Ran well, attending a fast pace, staying on for third. I'm liking the chance to run better with a forward trip. But I gave a little look, and this one is crazy, but Tuck In, just get at 40 odd to 1.
Okay.
I felt like this one ran actually halfway okay, and I thought watching that tape, there was a steady, meaningful stage. I'm probably just nuts, but at 41 to clunk on for third or fourth, why not? I'm going to put a couple dollars on Tuck In here to get in there with horses like the 7 and the 11 at Belmont.
One of my favorite angles, debut for a tag, next time protected.
Mm-hmm.
To me, the connections, either maybe it's a money thing or they think they've got something. And for a horse to rally the way that this one did, made up some ground late. I know there's a fast pace, but maybe they saw enough to say, you know what, maybe we try a little bit more difficult next time, knowing that we don't run the risk of losing the horse.
Yeah, I mean, it's a wild one. This is a horse that could run last, but when you're getting compensated like that, why not? I would have been remiss not to mention that idea. Fractorization gets right out on top. Magnolia's Lady right there as well. Where is Pure Beauty right now? Looks like he's getting a decent fun
right now. Yeah, not a bad little position. Jose's knuckling on her a little bit. I don't know if she's got any run. I mean, if this is nothing more than a tune-up, kind of get a race under her belt and she'll move forward. This would be sort of the MO for the Henning barn. It looks like Fractorization is just kind of moving well right now. We'll see if Magnolia's Lady's got a little bit more run on the inside for the second out. But
they so often do run better second out. We know that much. The 5's just kind of plugging along, going to need a miracle to get up even into the top 4. And here comes the favorite. Snick looks to be getting ready to go by Fractorization. Bless Fractorization with a combination of herding and yeah, that's how often do we see that move on the circuit? And then they let go, and it worked to my benefit there. We'll see if they look at it, but it looked like the typical race riding that they allow in New York.
And I mean,
I don't love it, but it is.
I was going to say that's the thing. It's should it be allowed? I'm sure to each their own. I think it's borderline at best, but if basically they've set the precedent that this isn't a major thing, so based on that, they probably shouldn't look at it. I think they should, but again, when that's kind of what you've laid out is sort of your stance, then don't be surprised when it happens.
It did look to me like the 12 had all. I mean, it's a perfect example of I guess why it works, but why maybe it shouldn't be allowed. I mean, the 12 just seems, maybe hanging a bit for a second there on the wrong lead as well, but still looked like the 12 was going to just switch and win. And then, the intimidation tactic right there changes the entire dynamic of the race. But again,
when you go left-handed and you drift out a path and a half, like that to me warrants at least taking a look at it. I mean, it would be bad enough if it was a right-handed move and the horse drifted out a bit. But I mean, again, it's not someone who doesn't know what's going on. It's Jose Ortiz. I mean, this is as good a rider as you're going to find. So
it's deliberate. There's no doubt in my mind about that. That's not the horse. That's tactic, and
it's a move, right?
Yeah, and it's one that. Like you said, as long as they're gonna allow it, you'd almost get mad at a jockey for not doing it. But it's from a safety point of view, I don't love to see it. And I'm talking about this like that's definitely what happened. Should see the head on and all, but I'm pretty sure that's what happened at all.
If I'm a pitcher and I know that the home plate ump is going to give me 4 inches off the outside of the plate, I'm going to use it every time. I don't care if the batter looks at it and says that's not actually a strike. If the ump's going to give it to me, I'm going to take it.
Exactly.
Plain and simple.
They are looking at it. The inquiry sign is up, and it doesn't look like even a jock's objection. This looks like the stewards actually saw it themselves. There was one, there was that one yesterday with Irad that was pretty.
That was pretty bad.
It was pretty bad, and it's not something that, in my opinion, should have been a DQ because it didn't change the order of finish. This one changes the order of finish, so they have more justification potentially to do something about it. I still don't think they will, but they do have more justification if they want to. But it also, you do see them sometimes correct the last thing that happened. Here's the head-on for the first time, so we could see if it looked like what we thought it looked like. Yeah, I mean,
it's at least 2, if not 3 pads.
Yeah, and they actually might even touch. I think this might be a DQ. It certainly should. In my view, it should be, but they might not have any choice but to take this one down. So we'll follow that story. That has major implications on this contest for the people fighting down the bubble. We should give your thought. I didn't look at it. No, I did look at it because it's in the Stronach bet. We should talk about this 10th race at Gulfstream very quickly and get back to this DQ. If it is going to be a DQ, they'll take at least another couple of minutes looking at it, I would think. But what did you come up with in Gulfstream's 10th race?
I loved strong-headed, and he scratched. I would have been all in on the 7, and unfortunately, he's not going to run. I ended up audibling in this instance. I haven't loved anything that any of these horses have done in the afternoon. I ended up going to the outside with Fake Muse, and perhaps a wire threat, set a fast pace in that most recent run. If we can get a little bit of a more moderate pace this time around, maybe this one can get a little bit brave. Having said that, there is some other speed in here, so I guess it really depends. I do like the move. Not that Trejos, the bug, does a poor job. I think he's a fine, young rider. I do think Victor LeBron, who's been around for a minute, I think this is perhaps an upgrade in a spot like this. I just, from the outside, I think you got to be a little bit aggressive and you got to use so you don't get hung too wide rounding the first turn.
We went with Mr. Matuszek as our lone A. We both had Moni as our top pick who scratched. That gave us Matuszek as the A, and we did use the 11, who you just mentioned with the funny name, as our B horse. Still watching what's going on at Belmont. If you're not going to take this one down, why have DQs? It does look like there's even contact there that I missed the first time around. So it looks pretty bad. I'd be surprised if they let this result stand. I think I'm getting DQ'd out of a winner, but I'm gonna say that's the right decision. It's just the kind of thing that happens in this game from time to time. Loading in at Gulfstream, tricky for players to not knowing exactly if they're drawing live or not. But since it's not a live contest, it doesn't. Whether you hit there or not doesn't matter. You already got your pick for this last race at Gulfstream, so folks can just root themselves on. I went with the 9. Matt went with the 11. I wouldn't be surprised if we hit the exacta here to close things out at Gulfstream. That would be a nice way to wrap this edition of the Horseplayers Happy Hour.
You're so right about if this were a live contest, though, you're in a real pinch right now.
Yeah,
because either if you need the horse or you're trying to protect against, the inquiry sign's down. There's Jose Ortiz 2 wins, so I
don't know what to say. I'm curious if Twitter is exploding. What am I missing? This was more than just path taking. They actually had contact.
But again, I've said things like this in the past, like it's New York, might as well be Wild West. Like they just allow. I pray it doesn't go down this way, but it's gonna take a disaster for all of a sudden there to be some sort of reform or another way to look at it. And I get the whole category 1 thing and this and the other. I don't know for certain that the 11 is better than the 12. Do you?
Definitely not.
I have no.
Under any to me, that's a DQ. I'm just being honest. Somebody could show me something I missed. I don't think it looks like the other horse. When I did it again, obviously we're doing 16 things. Sometimes I'll miss it when the other horse is like in as much as that one was coming out, but I don't think that's the case there.
No, and isn't the whole idea of one horse being better than the other unless it's by a poll, is that a subjective thing? I get the idea you don't want to take obvious winners down, but
this was not that.
Define an obvious winner. To me, an obvious winner is a horse that wins by 10 or 5.
The incident yesterday. To me, the incident yesterday was clearly, I should get days for and shouldn't have affected the result of the race. This one, I think, if the 11 and 12 straight courses, the 12 goes right by. That's how I was seeing it. Meanwhile, we've got the 10. Sallow looks like this thing to bed at Gulfstream. Our 9 fighting on, but it's going to come 10-6-9, I think, in the end at Gulfstream. And we'll see. Not results are necessarily going to shake up the leaderboard in these last 2. Probably more shocking for minor positions. What was the 10 in the end?
I mean, 10 went off at 5.
Okay.
You know, so I mean, I guess a fringer, if depending on what the number was, that's a first-time starter for Wesley Ward. Ward typically going longer is not a major positive, but they paid a boatload of cash for this horse.
Yeah, this one got it done. I feel like it's going to be a very different year for the Ward barn. You know, I feel like it already has been.
Yeah.
Though it did have nice successes at Royal Ascot with those seconds and the nice winner. But yeah, that's not an angle I typically look to for him. But this one was clearly ready. I mean, really, very impressive.
And PTF, this will have an impact. It's going to knock a few people out and put a few people in.
Excellent. Well, I mean, I say excellent. It's more interesting that way. I feel bad for the people. I didn't mean to root down the people in 6, 7, and 8 who didn't have the horse.
Excellent, depending on who you are.
Yeah, that's right. Excellent or awful. That's how it goes at the end of these contests. Let's pull up the screen. We'll have another minute here before this thing becomes official. Go to the leaderboard right now and get prepared for it. We can probably figure some things out.
You're gonna have some, like Sam Stinson should. I shouldn't say should. It's going to be close. I mean, you're looking at 12, call it 17, 18 bucks. It'll be close. Who ran second? The 6, Joe Benjamin. Yeah, I mean, I would have, if I had to make a call right now. The problem is, well, I shouldn't say the problem is. No, Sam Stinson, I think, is going to probably get in now.
And I think Brother Ben is also looking very good to snag one of those low spots.
Well, it's 8. It's not 7. I keep thinking it's 7. So yeah, I mean, Brother Ben should be good. The interesting, I think probably Sam Stinson and Brother Ben will pop in, and then Chris Podratz and Ben Burkett might unfortunately get bounced. That would just be my guess. Looking at the numbers,
we do have a shorter price in second that's going to depress place prices. So for whoever the next player down is, who has the 10, could end up coming into play in a negative way. But we're going to see it all here in a second. That one of the things about horseplayers.com, things update very quickly. So we should be able to see this and figure out who's going to advance to this game tomorrow. Folks have the opportunity to play along. Pop Matt up on NBC. I'll be on Sky Sports Racing. I know we have some viewers and certainly some listeners on the podcast front tuning in internationally in Ireland and the UK. I'll be on Sky covering these big stakes races. Really looking forward to another night on there. The internet connection held pretty well here today. I was a little nervous about being out here in the woods.
That was good.
Yeah, but one or two little hiccups we can live with that without too big of a problem. So I'll be on there if folks want to check that out. And constantly we're always putting up stuff on Twitter. Matt's one of my favorite follows, at Bernier_Matt, giving observations, picks, all kinds of good stuff throughout the week. And we'll just tease that you're going to be a guest, Matt, on a new show that's going to have a video element debuting next week with our buddies. I know you've been working with them for a while, and I'm just getting ready to start working with our friends over at racingpicks.com. So that's going to be debuting on the network next week, and it should be a lot of fun. You having a good experience writing some pieces over at racingpicks.com so far?
Yeah, it's been fun to, that was one of the things that I missed most about, I didn't do a ton of it for the racing form, but when that chapter closed, the writing aspect went away. It became all podcasts, became all television, all video, all that kind of stuff. And I did enjoy writing up the analysis pieces. And, the folks over at Racing Picks and Odds Checker, they opened up that door to, kind of explore that as an opportunity and as an avenue again. So it's been fun so far. And I'm glad that now we've got them looped into the In the Money family.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be a good time. All right, so that race at Gulfstream comes 10-6-9, and we have our 8 players who are going to be advancing. Joshua Bodie, our overall winner with an impressive score, really just strafing the field at 74-20. Michael Cavana, second, 58-60. Shona, all the ones, Rosenblum, checking in third, 52-70. Mike Somich, 48-50. Sam Stinson, 47-70, that nice last winner, pushing him up above the line, as it did with Ben Baychock. Jerry McLennan, who was there all day, hangs on with 46-20, and place number 8 goes to Mark Wilgard, who was also there most of the day. A little bit unlucky for, we'll call out the bubble boys, we'll call them, Nick Warius and Steve Simonovich, who was an NHC final tableist maybe 2 years ago now. And I also met in his capacity back in the day as a publichandicapper.com editor. They both had the last winner, but missed the mark. Nick by only 80 cents. If they'd had a decent place price on their 10, they might have knocked out Jerry and Mark. But as it is this time around, the win goes to those 8, and Nick and Steve will come back and compete another day. So a very lively and fast contest today. Great, Matt, getting a chance to hang with you. Just another reminder, folks, check Matt out on NBC tomorrow, his work at racingpicks.com. And, of course, the Matt Bernier Show over on, you get it on iTunes. You get it wherever you get your podcast. Search for that. Search for the In the Money Media Network. Please rate, review, communicate, and we're going to keep pumping out this content as long as folks are enjoying it. We'll be back with news about the future of Horseplayers Happy Hour at some point as well. Matt, any final thoughts before we get out of here tonight?
No, I think it was a good contest. Had a little bit of everything. A bit of a dud for me. Now we roll into the Keeneland Qualifier. Hopefully some better luck this evening. And, tomorrow, looking forward to a good day of racing down at Belmont. And safe, smart, don't do anything silly. 4th of July. Try to keep it all, do what you're supposed to do. Don't go too crazy. We'll see what the future of these happy hours, what they hold. But it's been a good run so far, and hopefully we can continue on.
All right, I'll see you on TV, my friend. Thank you to everybody involved, our friends at Breeders' Cup, Horseplayers.com, our charity partners, Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation, and the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance. You can donate to them directly as well, trfinc.org/players or tbaftercare.com. Thanks to Peter Rotundo, specifically at Breeders' Cup, who's really been the main content producer of these shows. Thanks to JK. We brought him up like 6 times. We'll throw out some props to him. Check out his new piece in the TDN. I thought he did a really nice job on that one. We'll thank our producer, DJ Unstable, producer Craig himself, Craig Gorbanoff, has been a rock throughout all this stuff. We could not do it without him. So we appreciate that very much. Most of all, thanks to all of you, the people who tune in to watch these shows, to play in these events, to listen to the podcast, especially those of you who reach out and contact us, whether it's on Twitter or over at inthemoneypodcast.com. This show's been a production of the Breeders' Cup and In the Money Media. Our business manager is Drew Coatney. Our chief creative officer is Jonathan Kinchin. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatale. May you win all your photos.